and looking at this through an energy lens is really relatively new. And so we're kind of designing it as we go along in some respects.
This episode of CU Live is sponsored by our friends at MORPC, the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, and features stories about local and regional partners that envision and embrace innovative directions in economic prosperity, transportation, sustainability, and an inclusive Central Ohio. MORPC's transformative programming, innovative services, and public policy initiatives are designed to promote and support the vitality and growth in the region. For more information, visit morpc.org or click the link in the video description.
Hello and welcome to CU Live. I'm Susan Post, Associate Editor of Columbus Underground, and I have with me today Jon-Paul D'Aversa, who is the Senior Energy Planner at the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission, or MORPC, as you guys are probably familiar with. So yeah, I just want to start with getting to know a little bit more about you and your job at MORPC. So tell us a little bit more about your role as Senior Energy Planner.
Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely.
So basically, planning as a whole is just looking at where we are, how we got there, where we want to go, and how we want to get there, right? And energy planning essentially is just looking at all of that through the lens of energy. And so we have a residential services department, and my job is to look at basically everything else that energy touches, which is literally everything.
Right.
So I do a lot of work looking primarily at energy consumption with our local governments, both in their buildings and their fleets, transportation within the community, and then also the commercial sector, and understanding kind of the larger utility scale things and how they impact our communities.
Great, and we'll talk some more about that in some future videos, so definitely stay tuned for that. But you know, when a lot of people hear MORPC, I feel like they think of transportation or urban planning, and you know, I think you're kind of touching on this, but you know, tell us kind of what role energy planning plays in the larger context of urban planning.
All right. So especially in Ohio, but honestly all over the country, energy planning, specifically energy planning and looking at this through an energy lens, is really relatively new, and so we're kind of designing it as we go along in some respects. But energy touches on the climate. It touches on our communities and whether or not people have economic ability to prosper, and job growth and all that kind of stuff. And then we see it in other aspects where there's even a nexus with water, and how both our water systems for cleaning water and providing it to people, but then also it's a tool that we can use to produce energy. And so there's all these different things. It really touches on just about everything.
It sounds like it. So what are some of the programs that MORPC provides in regards to energy initiatives?
All right, so residential services, I'm part of the planning and sustainability team, but our residential services is a really big component, super important. They provide energy efficiency for income qualified residents. And then as far as my side of that sphere, we have a few different programs coming out in 2021, and we're starting to roll them out now. The big one, of course, is the Local Government Energy Partnership, which we've been running for about 2 years now. It's been primarily focused on energy benchmarking in government buildings and fleets. And then we have some new programming coming out, the Clean Energy Acceleration Program. We have an energy data and analysis program coming out. And then also our Clean Mobility Transition, which is really looking at how we can take our existing transportation infrastructure, improve the equity of the access to the different parts within the community, and just clean it up for everybody, and be better stewards of the environment and our resources.
Great. So it sounds like, you know, as people are taking more interest in this, you're adding more and more programs and initiatives that are kind of addressing it and really introducing these concepts to the community, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
And something you touched on earlier, you mentioned climate change briefly. And, you know, there's a lot of talk when people discuss climate change about rising oceans and things like that. You know, obviously we're not going to fall into the ocean in Ohio.
Right.
But there are some other, you know, kind of noticeable changes. Like, for example, there's a group of studies that came out last summer they were talking about how temperatures are rising and said that by mid-century, Franklin County will experience an average of 25 days a year with a heat index above 100, which kind of feels like that
Sounds
could have
like
been
we're
this
right
year.
about there.
And including 11 days heat index over 105. So what are some of the other impacts that we could see if we don't address climate change through initiatives like energy planning?
Sure. So there's a lot. That's a huge bag.
I'm
So
sure.
I'll touch on a few. One that's really important to Central Ohio on the agricultural side of things. So we're likely to experience not only heat on average rising, but especially temperatures at night. And so that changes different growing patterns. What plants we can grow.
Interesting.
And so that might change our economy in a completely different way than we've experienced it thus far. On the community side, so already you can see Columbus is installing cooling stations, and so people being able to respond to that, but at the same time, for those of us.
Tell us a little bit about what a cooling station is for those that aren't familiar with
Oh,
that.
sure. So a cooling station, they can take on all sorts of different forms, but primarily it's a safe space that's cooled to an appropriate temperature, so probably between 70 and 75 degrees. People can come there when it's too hot if they don't have air conditioning, water's provided, things along those lines, just to give people respites from the heat. And so that's the other side of this. As the temperature goes up, people are going to start using more and more energy to keep their homes cool.
Right.
Well, that gets more and more expensive.
I
It
see that
puts
in my
more-
electric bill currently.
Exactly. And that puts more stress on the grid, and so we need to build out more infrastructure, and so prices go up, and it's like this positive feedback loop that we need to stop at some point.
For sure. Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, John-Paul, and telling us a little bit more about what you do at MORPC.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.